Hello, this is Jennifer, and today I want to talk about grains. So I want to talk about grains in the context of my first year of gardening. So you might think, given the context of this year, 2020, the year of COVID victory gardens, that I may have chosen this year to be my first garden because of food insecurity kind of things. And the reality is that I had been renting a house and I got super into gardening pretty much in winter at the house that we were renting. And I started growing a bunch of things in cups in the windowsill, because it actually had a very great south-facing window in both the kitchen and the room that I used as like my office. And so I had just started to try to grow everything. Anything that I had in reach, basically, I tried to grow. And that included things like popcorn and rice, and I got a few bags of seeds. I got my first mix was a survival garden seed pack, and then I got some wildflower seed packs, so like mixed seeds, so I could get the largest variety, basically with the least amount of money. And so for my venture into grains, we'll say I started in the winter, and then we moved to this house in February, I believe, just before crazy COVID stuff started happening, right? So then at that time I was like, I need to transplant everything that was growing in my windowsill. And that included the popcorn that I started in little cups. And I also had rice. So I don't think like a beginner gardener would usually start with rice, but I did out of convenience. So I will talk about my experience. Basically, the corn that I put in from moving in, when I planted it in like February, it froze and died, obviously. This is how much of a novice I was. That gives an impression. Also, I would no longer be starting corn in a cup as like the method of planting things out. I would definitely plant that straight in the ground first go. I also didn't have an idea about, well, I learned about how corn was pollinated, and basically, for other folks who were not in the know, corn is pollinated by wind, and the plant grows quite tall, and you'll get like little things on the side. That's where your corn is going to come out. It'll start as just like a little bump on the main stalk, and you'll get some stuff at the top that starts to become a thing. The stuff at the top is going to provide pollen for your silks when they pop out of the stuff at the bottom. And the way that corn would pollinate itself is in the wind. When it's jostling around, the stuff at the top will fall down onto the silks popping out of the corn husk, right? And then you will be, or I guess naturally, that would be pollinating each kernel of corn. And so I knew that if I didn't have assurance that would be happening. Basically, if I didn't have enough corn planted, I would have to help that process along. And I did that successfully for I'd say maybe 1.5 cobs, corn cobs, and then just completely failed on all subsequent attempts. So I had one very strong corn stalk, and then the rest that I had attempted just didn't have the same sort of vigor, and they were all staggered by like a week after that one. And yeah, I just did it completely wrong. But I did get some corn, and I will show you that now. So it's not a lot. I have the variety because the popping corn that I had planted had failed. And by the time that it had failed, I actually did allow myself to buy like $30 worth of seeds. So I had gotten this variety from M.I. Gardner. Oops, sorry. So I got this blue Hopi corn because I just thought it was beautiful, and I really wanted to grow grain corn. Again, this is just one of those things. I appear to be very into beans, cherry tomatoes, and grain corn versus what seems to be more popular, which are giant heirloom tomatoes and sweet corn. But anyway, so I wanted to be able to make my own grains because I want to have like a well-rounded ability. It's not necessarily for like self-sufficiency. This is not really what I'm working towards. I'm working towards gaining the knowledge so that I could be able to do that kind of stuff if needed. So I'm not necessarily aiming to have the most practical garden, if that makes sense. And it's not necessarily for money saving because grains are very cheap. I just think it's an interesting thing to grow. So anyway, yeah, so you can see I did not get very much, but what I was amazed by is the quantity, volume-wise, even from messing up so hard, I feel like I got so much for how poorly it worked, you know? And so I really think, for me, the best bang for my buck and time and all that when it comes to grains is going to be corn. It is a one-use kind of plant, but I think I have a plan next year, and I have some new corn varieties, and I'm very excited about it. So, yes, I will actually be planting it somewhat in a way that you are supposed to plant corn. Okay, and hopefully trying out like a Three Sisters or a version of Three Sisters when doing that, because I guess the thing that's kind of weird about corn is you can't just really like dot it around the yard unless you want to like really micromanage your pollination. So I like dotting things around the yard, if you can't tell. So yeah, that's how the corn experience went. I tried planting it later in the fall, or later in summer to get a fall crop, and it doesn't rain. It doesn't rain literally all summer, and so they just did really poorly. They didn't really grow very much at all. And yeah, I think I'm gonna try to put these in once it is not frosty, I'll plop in all my corns in the bag and try that out. I'm very excited. Otherwise, I'd say that it's not like a difficult thing to grow, it's just a difficult thing to get to crop correctly. And if you have, if I had popcorn out at the same time as I had this corn, and they were close enough together, you could get the cross-pollination, and then you get kind of funky kernel situations going on because the seed is the kernel. And so, yeah, anyway, not describing that super well. Look it up if you're interested in all that. What shall we do next? Let's talk about rice. So the rice that I grew in a cup in the windowsill is actually just the method that I used to grow the rice throughout the whole summer. And what I did is I had the rice in a yogurt container. I had that on my counter at my old place, and I just transferred it directly here, stuck it out in the yard, still in the yogurt container, topped it off with water every so often, because it doesn't have any holes in the container, it just contains all the water. And so it's really actually quite an easy thing to just kind of set and forget and then top it off with water every whenever. So I planted several grains of this wild rice mix. This is food to eat. And the one that I had grow is not one of the fun ones. And by that I mean it's not one of the black ones or one of the like reddish ones, but just one of the like white, tan, kind of normal rice grains. And I have my rice in this little envelope as seed basically, because it is not a lot. I still have some rice maturing on the plant outside that I could gather, but I'll just show you. It's basically a small handful, and this has all of the hull in that on it. And I have not yet looked up how to process rice. So, here, hopefully you can see that so I don't have to tip it all out of my hand. But it has a little hole, and then the grain of rice is inside of it. And so yeah, not very much. Probably not ideal growing conditions as it was in just a small yogurt container. And I only had one plant. So I honestly forgot kind of about this rice, about having that kind of experiment. And I'm thinking, oh, well, I could just go crazy with it. And I have, I have this whole bag. Basically, I was going to make dinner today. Literally, I was going to make dinner today. And I saw this bag of rice in the pantry, and I was like, oh, I could grow this. I remembered that I could try to grow these other kind of varieties of rice and then try those out for next year. The problem that I had with germinating the rice is that they would actually kind of like mold over entirely and then go bad. Like they would kind of germinate and then it was just too wet and they would mold over. So also, I'm not the best. I'm not the best. When I had the cup of the yogurt container of rice inside the house, I definitely fostered a small family of mosquitoes on my windowsill, and just be warned, standing water does have a high chance of having mosquitoes in it. So, let's go on to the next grain. The next grain is amaranth, which is not a true grain, whatever that means. Sorry. I don't know what this attitude is coming from, but this is another one of the seeds that I actually bought. Amaranth does grow wild as a weed in many places, but I have not come across it. We have curly dock and we have other weeds. There's things that grow here. Oh, chicory is an example of one of the, like a prolific weed that just does its thing here, but amaranth is not one of those. In my specific area, I haven't seen it around. So I bought some, and I'll say this is a great green, and I know this isn't the greens video, but amaranth is a delicious cooked green, like especially with like a red onion, like a sauteed red onion, and then you chop up a bunch of amaranth greens, chop up some mustard greens, maybe some chard, and that is so good. I make like a little sauteed greens, like sloppy joe. Make a little sourdough bun and then put some mayonnaise on the bun, and then slop on some caramelized onion with greens in it, and it's one of my favorite like springtime foods. Anyway, I don't know how I'm making myself hungry despite having like an entire butternut squash and a large salad. But anyway, here is the amaranth that I have harvested so far. I have a ton of dried amaranth heads, like seed heads, that I need to process. I need to winnow them, and that process stinks. I need to nail down the process to just make it less tedious. And I think I might use a little, I was just looking down because I have this little desk fan. I'm thinking with the rest of the amaranth, I think I might just do a real quick slapdash job of it to see how much grain I can actually get in like 2 hours or something, not like tens of hours, you know? So I think that one of the problems with grains and flower type crops is that it takes a lot of processing, and so it really does make sense to be done on a large scale versus on a small scale when that processing can't be as mechanized. For the corn, it's less of a problem. It's easier to pop off the whole kernel from the cob, and it's also not outside of the realm of possibility to get something that will grind the corn into flour. I bought a hand grinder, like a burr grinder, for myself for my birthday, and it was intended for coffee beans. That's what it was being sold for, but I did look it up, and it was possible to do corn in it. But then I broke it within the first day of using it, and I don't know what to do now. So I'm thinking of getting some sort of grinding attachment for my KitchenAid, which hopefully will be less prone to breaking. I don't know who designed this stupid coffee grinder, but instead of having something that's like not easy to deform, there was a plastic insert inside of the ceramic grinding mechanism that, like, I kind of understand why you would use plastic in that space. Sorry, I'm getting into my engineering brain. I'm an engineer. The design of this thing just boggles my mind because it broke. It broke the first day, and just because there was a cord in the machine, like, I get so frustrated with the way that modern things are made. They're almost always so bad. Like, oh boy, I need to find some antique shit so that I don't lose my mind. It was like $50 too. I thought, you know what? Everything made now is shit. If I buy something that's $20, it's gonna break. And so I was like, I'll get the $50 one. And it broke and I died. No, I did not die, but I was very upset about it. Anyway, what are we talking about now? I think these are all the grains that I grew. I have actually quite a lot on the docket for next year because I bought some seeds, and I was thinking, and looking at the time, I was thinking I could share at the end of this video the seeds that I have planned for the grains for next year's garden, but I also thought it's gonna be a lot of time to talk about next year's garden, so I think that'll be a whole nother series, is talking about all of those and kind of at least what I conceive of the plan, the possible plan for where those will be going and how I'll get them in there, all that jazz. So, I guess the one other thing that I have that's similar to amaranth is chia, but I think I might talk about that in like a mint family video. Maybe I'd talk about mint, chia, like basil or something in a video. The problem that I'm having with the chia right now, I have no idea. It's way more difficult than the amaranth to even get the stupid chia seeds separated. I don't know how people do it. So, something to Google again. I gotta look it up. I think that's it. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. Sounds like Pebble is breaking into a bedroom over there. So, I think that's my cue to leave. As always, thanks for watching.